This is Inside the FLX from FingerLakes1.com. Live, I'm Ted Baker, and I welcome back an old friend, Chris Lavin, Executive Director of the Geneva Boys and Girls Clubs. Chris had a little conflict, so we couldn't do the usual 9 o'clock, so we've got midday Inside the FLX. Chris, welcome.
Well, thanks, Ted. Good to see an old face in a new place.
I don't know if we ever had this conversation or not. You were in the newspaper business.
Sure.
What took you from newspapers to nonprofits and service?
Well, I was the senior editor of the San Diego Union Tribune in my last station. And during the downturn of 8 and 9, the company that owned the newspaper, which is I actually was a corporate employee, sold the newspaper. So they didn't need newspaper editors anymore. And I didn't want to leave San Diego to seek my next job, so I went into, I started teaching at a private school and doing marketing and public relations. And then and I discovered that I would prefer to work with the poorest kids in the world rather than the richest kids. And came home to Geneva, a little town. The city of Geneva had put me through college. I was not from a wealthy family, and they put me through Hobart College. And when I had the opportunity to maybe do some corporate building of the Boys and Girls Club, I took it. Took care of my mother for the last 3 years of her life and came home. So that Horace Greeley was wrong. You can go home again.
and you don't have to go west, young man. You can come back east.
No. Right.
So tell us a little bit about the clubs. Most people probably know the community center now on Carter Road, but you also have the Goodman Street location downtown, and both do slightly different things.
Yeah, Boys and Girls Clubs, I think they're sort of, it's a national brand. Their local manifestations are all very different. When I got here, my whole mission was kids have to do better in school. They have to learn to read. I don't think you have to get out of Geneva anymore. You can live a good life in Geneva, but if you want to get out and see the world, you have to have a good education. So I retooled the place really as a literacy academy for the first, second, and third graders at our Goodman Street location. And I've partnered with Hobart and William Smith colleges to have 40 tutors a week coming in 4 days a week to work with the kids. We're not academic per se, but we're augmenting the school district's efforts with the kids, extending their school days and offering tutoring when we need it. We also became, when I got home, the kids were hungry. They were coming from school extremely hungry, often going home to homes that had inadequate food. So we've become one of the, probably outside the school district, the second largest source of food for the community now, including twice monthly food distributions where we estimate over 2,000 people for a week's worth of food twice a month at a drive-through. We've built a pantry into our building. It's my thought that we've also extended our work down to 0 to 3-year-olds because if they don't get good nutrition while they're 0 to 3, they don't get good exposure to reading, to letters, to images. They don't show up at school ready to learn either. So we're trying to do a sort of womb to tomb.
And we'll get into all those services coming up in a little bit more detail. Geneva is very fortunate to have the community center on Carter Road, to have the building, period, to have it that close to the high school. Talk about the process of raising the money and getting that built and what a collaboration it was.
Yeah, I wasn't here. It was I was impressed when I came home from San Diego to see that the city the size of Geneva had the ambition to build a 24,000 square foot community center. What they didn't do, and this is often the case, is endow the building. So the day that they opened that turned the key on that building, they also took a $150,000 expense every year. Insurance, heating and light, cleaning, maintenance, landscaping, everything. And the Boys and Girls Club at that time had never raised more than $100,000 in the year. So it was a great leap of faith to build that building with its ambition without the economic promise of being able to pay for it. That's sort of what I inherited. After 5 or 6 years, they were running out of cash. And I had to diversify the services and prove to the community that it was worth investing in this building for the long run.
When did you see the role of the clubs beginning to change and become broader and become more integrated with the schools? Was that right from day one, or were there some societal changes you started seeing that led you to rethink the role of what you do?
Well, the day I came to Geneva with the intention of staying and taking this job, my first stop was with Mark Gearin, who was the president of Hobart William Smith Colleges. I had been doing, as I said, I've been working with the richest kids in America out in California. And I was instrumental at that place in trying to get that very wealthy school to take in some kids who were not wealthy. And I sort of started looking at what are the characteristics of success. And, I could look at my own life in Geneva. I grew up in a family with 9 kids. Parents didn't make much money, but they had expectations that we're all going to go to college. And we knew from the day we started in school that if we don't do well in school, we don't have much of a life. And in that way, I was rich. I was a rich kid because I had these key things that were important. So that was my approach coming back. I wasn't an educator by trade, and I wasn't trained in childcare or anything. I was a newspaper manager for what that, but I met with Mark, and we sat down there. He says, "What's your theory?" I said, "My theory is flood the zone, flood a kid's life with supportive, influential influences, or impressive influences that can impress that expectation of what they could do with their lives, and then good things will follow." And that's what we started doing. I went right to the school district and said, "You have a tutoring program that nobody goes to. Give me that funding, and I'm going to bring you kids." And Trina Newton, the school superintendent at the time, said, "Great." Everything I've done in Geneva since then really has been a collaboration between me and other organizations that have better funding and also share the mission of helping families and kids.
Well, and that leads into my next question, which is that, and we've had this conversation before, how service organizations sometimes tend to operate in their own lanes, and you really sought to break that down. And you said, how can I help what you do? How can you help what I do? And you've built up all of these different partnerships and collaborations over the years.
Yeah, part of my shtick is I like to be an Irish bomb thrower, I call it. I said, I talk about I always beat up on my sister, who was the women's basketball coach at Georgetown, for being part of the sports industrial complex that's so distorted American life and families. But I'm more and more these days talking about the nonprofit, the social services industrial complex that maintains itself, gets streams of funding, but don't look too harshly at their own performance in terms of, when they offer their services. A lot of organizations are open 9 to 5 during the week. Well, the families, the people who need that work, are working, and then they often can't get there. So I just had a meeting this morning, and I said, this new program we're starting has to be open Saturday mornings. It's when the families need us. It's when we can do our business. We're going to have to change our work habits and look for a way of doing it. I have to say that, there's always there's a tussle when you try and change things. But in general, people with good hearts and good minds come around and will do things. That's been my approach, and I've found generally willingness of people to think about what they really want to do.
And there was a good infrastructure in place. You have
Yes.
things like Geneva 2030, 2020 at the time, Geneva Reads, Success for Geneva's Children. So there were a lot of people sort of doing these things who never really thought about coming together and making a bigger whole.
Yeah, Geneva 2030, their whole approach is its collective impact of getting everybody moving in the same direction. I'm on that board, and I support it greatly. The one thing I'm sort of like, the Irish bomb thrower, saying, what have we produced this week? And that's why I'm doing things like these food distributions. Yes, we want food security in the long run. In the short run, there's tons of food available. What are we doing to get it out now? We can worry about the systems, worry about sustainability, but they're hungry families right now. Last weekend, I got a call from a family that had expected to be delivered food from the food distribution. Didn't come because some other agency didn't deliver it. So it was Saturday afternoon. I went in, I put together a big basket of food, went over to the house, went up a dark staircase in the back of a house that shouldn't be inhabited, probably, to a mother and an infant child. It was a very sad situation, and the food I brought into the house was the only food in the house at the time. That's in Geneva, New York, America, U.S. of A. Right now, we're better than that. We're better. Food is not shouldn't be a shibboleth of success for young families. We need to make sure the babies are fed anyway.
And when you realized the depth of this problem, you rolled up your sleeves and became a self-taught food service expert. I mean, again, you pulled together all these partnerships, you found sources of food, you found ways of getting it to people.
Yeah.
Tell us about that whole transformation into becoming a food distribution guru.
Well, one of the great things about being a journalist is that it's almost humbling daily. You're assigned to something you don't know much about, and you instantly run out to people who to deal with people who know more about things than you. So I'm perfectly trained to admit I know nothing and then go find the people who do. In this case, I found a guy named Mitch Gruber from Rochester, New York. He's a city council member up there, but should be better known as the head of Food Link. And they have a warehouse up there, and he and I got together. We saw the same thing. We have the food, let's get it into the houses. And so he taught me. He said, this is how we set up a drive-through, here's how we do it. He brought the trucks down. I got the people to hand it out. On the first time we did it, we had 150 cars, and I went and talked to every individual car personally and begged them for their phone number. So then we'd have a database so we could communicate with them for later distributions and for other services that we might be able to get at. Also, I think we now will start building a database so we can do some research to find out what are the sources of that food insecurity. Are there things, a lot of health issues. People suddenly they get cancer in their 70s and they have to choose between an expensive medicine and the food that they'd like to buy based on their income off Social Security. Well, who would think that you'd have to choose between a hamburger and your chemo? But we're finding people in line that's true of, and they're extremely thankful. And Mitch has the food. They've done a great job at Food Link in Rochester, and we're going to make sure that gets poured into the community with as consistently as they can bring it to us.
Another one of your partnerships was with the student-run dairy program at Cornell University.
Yeah, that was, again, great being a journalist because I knew nothing about. In fact, I had never touched a cow. I had never seen one up close. I was a city boy, but I heard that when the Cornell students had to leave for the pandemic, they had 120 cows down there producing milk every day. They were going to shut the dairy down at one point for the pandemic, and our interests, we brought our vans down there. I rented a truck, and we went down, and they started loading up the milk that they were producing. The state gave them a subsidy for continuing the work with us, and we distributed it from Naples to Sodus to all the way through Wayne County, all the way through Ontario County, and that partnership persists today as they have excess milk and things. We can go down and get it and bring it out to people who need it. That's a great. It's amazing to me how much the American food system produces, and how much of it had been going to essential waste before the pandemic. We also have a partnership with Freihofer's bread in downtown Geneva. They produce. Who knew that to keep Wegmans stores filled with bread, name brand, Thomas's English Muffin, Entenmann's Crumb Cakes, you have to produce about 15 or 20% more to always have enough to fill the stores. It's the worst thing in the world for a store, I learned, to have a customer come in and not see their product. They lose the customer that way. So baking a little bit more. Well, prior to the pandemic, you know what they did with that stuff? They ground it up, put it in bags, and sold it to pig farmers for 2 cents a pound. Wow. That's what I said. So instead now, they give it to us. I send my vans in. They get a tax write-off, which I think has got to be worth more than 2 cents a pound for what they're giving me. And we deliver bread from, literally from the northern Lake Ontario in the north to Naples in the south, to the Mennonite community, to everywhere in Geneva, and to the families of the Boys and Girls Club. We go over to Auburn as well from time to time. It's just a great thing. If the pandemic taught us anything, there's food out there to eliminate some of this needless need.
You can't collect and distribute perishables without storage in between, so tell us about the walk-in coolers.
Yeah, so I came up with this idea. I said, if we had walk-in coolers, so I took an art room that was too small for the art room, but big enough for 2 coolers, and I asked donors. People instantly saw the beauty of this, and they raised $30,000. Ended up costing me $50,000 to do it, but they raised $30,000, and we had a walk-in freezer, walk-in cooler right in the building. And so now we can accept food. We can take it when we have a drive-through and there's leftovers. We can store it properly and safely. And I can tell you that $50,000 investment has already produced probably $250,000 of food into the homes of the Geneva area, greater Geneva area. What an ROI, return on investment, that is. And it's all, on the edges of things. Nobody's hurting. Wegmans is one of our big partners. They don't feel like they're losing business to feeding people who can't quite get it together.
And that leads to these twice monthly distributions you're doing now. And one of the things we've learned, I think, over the years is we've challenged our image of what hunger is all about. It's not necessarily people out of work. It can be anybody in any given month. So you're really stressing, come get this food. We don't care about your income. If you have a neighbor who can't be here, come get it, give it to them.
Yeah, so look at what's the great sin of this extra food? The great sin would be not to have it used. So if it's used by somebody who's working poor or it's lower middle class, and it frees up some money in the house to pay their car payment or
get that chemo.
Yeah, or put money aside for a family vacation because they're that close to the edge. Where's the sin in that? There's a sort of American sense that everybody's a scammer, and if you're poor, you deserve it. And I don't know. Now working in this field for a few years, I can see that most people who struggle, are because they didn't have the same good things I had as a kid. I had 2 parents who kept us on a direction and put a goal in front of us and gave us everything we needed to reach that goal. When you don't have that and your family doesn't have that history or that opportunity, you end up in places that are not great. So I think we have to get over the idea that poverty in America is deserved and earned. Not to even mention the big issues going around about the longer term history of slavery and the poverty and the urban problems that have perpetuated over time. It scares some people to make that link, but that link is there. And we just need to, food is something we don't have to mess with. Get the food, get it to people who need it. I can't imagine someone saying, well, I'm not going to pursue work now. I can just live off this food the rest of my life. They're not like that. They're working they're like the ducks on the lake, with the feet going far faster than you think to stay in one place. And I don't see a lot of scammers in the people we give food to.
You have a new program called First 1,000 Days. Now, I remember you told me a while back that one of the things we've learned is we can lose kids a lot earlier than we thought. It's not enough to reach them at 7 or 8. You've got to reach them early on because those paths start diverging very early.
Yeah, so that was the other thing, that not being schooled in education, not having any background in it, I was just baffled by the fact that by first grade, you could have kids, by the school's estimation, a year behind in reading. Well, they're just learning to read, but they just all went to kindergarten together. What's happening here? And so all the evidence suggests that the problems in school, particularly in the early grades, clearly date back to things in the 0, 1, 2, 3 years that are inadequate. And it's not just the poor. We started opening our gym to help this age group. We had college professors with their kids come in. Well, the college professors are very smart, but they don't know how to play with kids. And some of those kids were becoming a little socially distant from their other kids because they didn't have the same experiences, healthy experiences in play that they needed. So poor kids, often the parents are scrambling so much, they didn't get read to as much. They didn't get the same nutrition. So we decided, and I just got off a meeting this morning with it, that we are going to offer free groceries, diapers, and everything to any family from 0 to 3 who comes in our place. Whatever they need, they're going to have. Our gym is dedicated from 8 a.m. to noon every day. And I'm going to open on Saturdays because I'm not going to be one of those agencies that's not open on the very time when the parents need us. We're going to figure a way to do this, and we're going to get this done. And the good thing is Geneva's all, you mentioned some of the partners. Everybody's behind this. Everybody sees the wisdom in it. It's not just my wisdom. Success for Geneva's Children has studied for 20 years in Geneva. HWS and the education department, everybody's on board. I'm maybe the maestro, but I'm not playing the instruments as much. Everyone else is. And I think this is a real good program. I think this is, if I had to choose between Little League and Junior League football and making sure that the first 3 years of every baby's life is got great nutrition and great exposure to things, heck, I would change, my bomb thrower idea now is get rid of high school graduation as a meaningful moment. It's not enough anymore. Got to go to grade 14. And the other thing is interscholastic sports. They're great, but they're limiting. Only a few kids play. What if you had a really robust intramural program expected from grade 3 on? Everybody plays. 5 teams, 6 teams, 7 teams playing against each other in town. And, but we give a lot over to this, as I talk about the sports industrial complex.
And you do a lot of that already. You have a basketball program at the community center.
Yeah.
And
I'm guilty of what I accuse people of doing wrong. But it's people love sports, and I do too. I played the sales and went on. But I do think that we really have to take a closer look at some of the great traditions of what we're doing. And kids, imagine I played 4 years of high school basketball, 1 on JV, 3 on varsity, got to travel all over the state. What a great experience I had. We only had 12 guys on our team. What did the rest of the people do during that time? Come and watch and clap for us? I think we could do better. When I was in San Diego, I loved that the University of California, San Diego did not have a football team, but they had 5 colleges within the university, and they all had their own teams and played against each other. And I said, boy, what a healthy community that was. So I like to see these discussions, even though I'm not going to win them.
Well, and one of the things I've enjoyed talking with you over the years is you are a big picture thinker.
Yeah.
The pandemic has certainly led to fundamental changes in the way we live. We've had the Great Resignation, where a lot of people have decided they can get by with less, and we don't need to work as much, and we don't need to chase the consumer goods as much. What else do you see long term in the way that we're going to live post-pandemic if we ever get there?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a homer now for the Finger Lakes. I wrote a book last summer called Finger Lakes Rising, an essay, basically, Finger Lakes Rising, about how the pandemic pointed out the strengths of this region, how we started stealing people from the Hamptons and from the Jersey Shore who came up and said, boy, space, air, quiet, all these things that we have. So I'm pretty bullish on what's becoming of our region. But I do think we have to grow up pretty quickly. I think particularly in Geneva, and I know this broadcast goes further than Geneva, but in Geneva, we need to see what a gift we have. We are the ground zero of the wine industry if we want to make ourselves that. We have to grow hospitality. We have to be welcoming to outsiders to come in and invest in our community in new ways. But the good thing is it's happening. And I think we need to use our lakefront more creatively. When I was in San Diego, I loved the fact that San Diego did not sell its waterfront. It leased it. So it had 100-year of lease payments from corporations that wanted to put a hotel on the lakefront. And that fueled other good things in the community. I think there's some creative ideas we can have as a region now that as the world looks at us, we got water, lots of it, good things. We got a few months of snow, but even that's charming in its own way. I lived in Florida for 14 years, and I can tell you, after the tourists leave in May, it's a hellhole for the rest of the time. It's hot as hell, and we're not...
I've always said Florida is Hamilton Street with beaches.
I think that's unkind to Hamilton Street, actually. There's a little bit more charm on Hamilton Street than most of the strip places along the Florida shores. But I shouldn't be unkind. The good people of Florida paid me for 14 years to write and edit for them, and I was glad to do it.
All these ideas cost money, and I know
Right.
you're always reluctant to come hat in hand, but talk about ways people can support the clubs and support these efforts going forward.
Sure. I mean, we do a lot of fundraising. Our budget was about $650 when I got here. It's about 1.2 now. And we have built an endowment. That's the big thing. The community's been very supportive of what we've been doing in the last 5 or 6 years. And we've built an endowment at the Rochester Area Community Foundation. We have a forever fund, money that goes up there we hope will never be touched. It will just earn income to fuel good things for the kids of Geneva. So it's at 1.2 million now. It needs to be at 3 million before I die. And I think, so there's ways of contributing there. Our annual food budget has gone through the roof because of the new efforts we're doing. We serve about 120 hot meals a night delivered to the kids' homes during the pandemic, as well as these food distributions. So contributions are always nice. Come to our annual dinner, buy our chances, do things. I'm very proud of the efficiency with which we use our money and invest it for the future generations. I do have to say, and I'll be honest about this, the one disappointment I had in Geneva when I came back after 40 years was that I was familiar with some of the families that were struggling 40 years ago, and many of them are still struggling now. We should have, in 40 years, been able to figure out how to do that. I don't know that we've overcome our segregation enough in Geneva. We're still tribal in our churches, and there are things that we can and need to do better. And in my current club, I'd say I'd give me a B to B plus at times. But there are things we need to do better as well. But
You mentioned
small town, we can do it.
You mentioned the annual dinner, and I wanted to bring that up because it's not only a major fundraiser, but it's a great showcase for what you do. A lot of the kids from the clubs have leading roles in running that dinner, and I was at one a few years ago with just some very eloquent young people up there stating their case, and just to see the great support. I mean, there were remote bidders coming in, and the bidding got fast and furious on some of these items, and it's a great thing to see, a great testament to what you do at the clubs.
The communities, we've had some successes with kids. I have to tell you right now, if you go into Wegmans in Geneva, there's a really good chance that one of the kids working on that front line are my kids. We have a great deal with Wegmans where they give us priority hiring, training. We bring the kids on as junior staff, get them used to interviewing, showing up, being dressed properly, dealing with the public. And many of my kids are bilingual, so we've made the Wegmans store in Geneva much more of a welcoming place to our Latino community. My organization is bilingual. I learned Spanish out in San Diego when I was there, and we're proud of a lot of what the kids are doing. We still lose kids though. We still have kids who are so struggling so much that they can't even come to the club. So we started a counseling session. We're not calling it counseling. We're calling it life coaching. So families will come in. I don't expel kids, but I do have to, when behavior becomes an issue, I do have to ask their families to come in for life coaching to see if we can come up with a new recipe. So we're not perfect. There are things you can criticize. I criticize every day myself. Some of the things we are not doing well enough with the resources we have, but it's a good investment right now. And our customers, the kids, pay off for another 70 years. So I'm happy to be doing this work. It was really I've been honored that Geneva has been as supportive of this old newspaper editor who lost his presses.
Well, radio guys had to move on too. So.
Yeah.
I know what it's all about. Chris, thanks for what you do. Thanks for sharing it with us. And I love that you're a cheerleader, but you're not a Pollyanna. You're willing to acknowledge when things aren't perfect and acknowledge how much work we still have to do, and look forward to helping you tell the story of it in years to come.
Well, I appreciate your help over the years. You've been good at getting the message out while I've been here, and even though both of us, I think, have faces made for radio, it's great to be on the air here. So,
all right, Chris Lavin, Executive Director, Geneva Boys and Girls Clubs. Coming up tomorrow, we will have a debrief podcast, and it's the 6th anniversary of the program, so co-creator Jackie Augustine will be with us. Josh Durso will be here, and we'll stir up all kinds of trouble and discuss all kinds of stuff coming up tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and stay with us.